Hey guys, how's it going? This is Josh Wood here, and I'm going to be showing you today a tutorial and pipeline for how to use the new Iray rendering system from Nvidia. Now, Iray just came out about a month ago officially, and has been in the works for the last, I believe, since 2010, so 6 years now. And it's finally out as an actual thing you can buy and use. Now, the reason why I'm going through this is because I spent the last 2 weeks after I got my hands on the official Iray, and it was just an absolute pain to actually get this thing to work. I mean, it was just, oh my gosh. I mean, it shouldn't have taken me 2 weeks to figure this out, but it was staring me in the face, and since this is brand new, it sort of has its own glitches. Now, here's the pipeline that we're going to be doing. We're going to be going from Maya, is where we made the model here, and we export everything. I already had this all pre-done. We are going into Substance Painter to export our textures. We are then going into Substance Designer 5. 5 is the only one that is able to use Iray at this moment. Then we are going to be going into, we're going to be using that to create an MDL file. We're then going to be taking that into Notepad++, because there's a glitch right now with Substance Designer 5 at the moment of this recording that I'll show you what it is in here in a little bit. And then we're going to be taking this into Maya again, turning on the Iray rendering system, and then we're going to be rendering out our texture with the MDL that we are going to be designing here. Now let's get started here. The very first thing that we're going to need to do is actually transfer over a MDL. Now, what's an MDL? MDL stands for Material Definition Language. This is like the material setup that Iray uses to get the realistic renders that you get. It's a series of code that's put together and interlaces with a whole bunch of stuff. You can even download some custom MDLs from other people. Go to Daz Studio and you can actually buy some from them, or even go to Nvidia and get the V materials, and from there you can actually use those and actually get an idea of what we're working with here. But let's get started here. Now what we're going to need to do is transfer a file over. I'm going to pull it up here. Now, right here, I'm sorry you can't see the whole URL here, but this right here is in your document section, not document section, this is in your program files when you installed Substance Designer 5. What we're going to be doing here is going into this URL. Let me try and put that back to where it was. I shouldn't be messing with things. Actually, no, I need to bring it over here so you can see. It's in Algorithmic Substance Designer 5 Resources 3D View Iray ALG Base. And this is the file that we're going to want to copy and transfer over to the actual program area for for Iray here. Now let me just put this back. And the folder where we need to copy this file into is right here. And this is in your local disk, program data, Nvidia Corporation, MDL ALG base, and we need to copy normal mapping MDL over into here. And by doing this will allow you to actually bring in your custom MDLs. When you don't put this in, any MDL that you make will not show up unless you're re-entering a line of code, but then it's not usable. And it is just a pain in the butt to do. Now, if you need to go find this file right here, if you don't have Substance Designer, then why are you watching this video? But you need to get this file in there to actually get any and all MDLs. If you don't, only certain MDLs will work. Now that we got that part taken care of here, let's just close these out. Can't see past my own big head. And now what we're going to be doing here is, after you make your model and then you unwrap it like you should, if you're a good person, you're going to take this into Substance Painter to paint it. Now, Substance Painter currently does not have an Iray rendering setup in it. It does not use the Iray renderer engine yet, but it's going to soon. It should be coming out later on this year. But let's just pull this up here. Here's the model I'm working with here. I already have everything taken care of. I've textured it the way I wanted it, and I got it the way I want it, and I think it looks pretty cool. It's a dragon hammer, obviously, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to set up an export system for you to export this out. Now, normally you should always have a file set up when you're making when you're doing anything with Maya for renders, and you're going to be exporting this out into its source images file. But since there are individual parts, the handle, the head, the teeth, and the hammer, we're going to be exporting out multiple sets. Now, let's just go over here to export. And here is the export I put up. I called it Iray PMR. This is for procedural metallic roughness, I believe it was. Anyways, here is the entire lineup here of all your exports that we're going to be using. Now, there is one thing that you may notice that is here that's been doubled, and that's for the normal. We have two normal sets right here, normal and a bump. One's with RGB, and the other one's with gray. Some of these things you can ignore. If the model does not have that texture to export out in this setup here, don't worry, it won't export it out. It won't make like some empty file. It'll only export out what we have. But what's going to export out here is the ambient occlusion, base color, immersive intensity. That's if these are in here, if there's any glowing elements. There are none in this. Specular, metallic, roughness, opacity, anisotropy, angle, level, IOR, normal, and bump. Now, the reason why we're exporting out two different versions of a normal texture is because I believe you're going to see this here in a little bit. There's a little bit of some shininess to the model that I have from the normal map, so I'm thinking it's probably a bump related issue. And after we get all this done right here, and you can pause the video, pull up Substance Painter, and get this pre-done. Right now, you can pause it and wait right here. Okay, we're back. Obviously, you have now unpaused the video, so let's continue on. There's also another one that I put together right here, and that is Iray with specular and gloss. It's almost the exact same, except there's no metallic in here, and there's glossiness and specular. And the specular is in a... Why did I do that? That's supposed to be a grayscale, okay? Well, actually, I think there's a color one. Anyways, make another one of this, make it gray and whatever. Now, if you take a look right here, you can see this line of code. If you're just now using Substance Painter, you get a free pass on this. You probably didn't know about this. If you are new, if you have used Substance Painter, you don't know about this, shame on you. What this right here is actually texture output setup. That it's the model that you imported in here. Like this right here, it would be hammer. And then that's the texture set right there. And that is when you are in Maya and you export out a file right here and it has a texture, rename the texture to be the part right here. Otherwise, as you can see right there, you can see blend 4SG. That's not what that's called. That is I believe that's the teeth. And that makes it a little bit more difficult. And it'll name this part of the code right there that, and it is annoying to rename. But after you get this taken care of, and we are going to be using the RPM, we are going to export out our textures. Now, you can use a PNG, you can use a TIFF. Iray works with all of these, but my recommendation, go with the TIFF. I want to save some space for this, so I went with PNG 16-bit, and it is a 4K model that I have right here, but I only exported out 2K just to save on space. After you're done with that, you export right here. Oh, before you export right here, you need to pick out the folder location by clicking this button and selecting the folder where you want these files to be dropped off. If you don't, it has its own default, which is easy to find. You'll be prompted to either hit OK to just go, okay, yeah, it's done render, it's done making the textures, or hit OK when it is, or hit open folder location to see where they're at and copy them to where they need to be. It's just easier to have it make the textures where they need to go. After you get this done here, let's just get out of this. We're not going to render it out. I already had these all done. We are then going to go into Substance Designer. This is the current version I am running here, and I'm using the Indie Live program to afford this. It's $20 a month, and you get the entire Iray suite, which is very nice, as well as live drops as well, which are materials that are available only through the live system on Substance Share, and there you can actually get a lot of other really cool materials to work with. But we're not going to go there right now. We could do that for another video, but right now we're going to continue on with this. Now, there is the textures. I already have them all set. I have made individual graphs. What you want to do is make a folder for your bitmaps, a folder for your mesh, and your folder for your substances or graphs, and rename them to the appropriate name. Now, what we're going to do right here, we're going to open the mesh here. We're going to go to the whole mesh. Now, also, when you save this part right here, because I recommend you do save, otherwise it might crash, is you save this into your Maya folder location where the rest of this is outside, then everything's where it is. And, okay. Oh, and, there we go. It's now got all the textures on there where it needs to be. Now, what we're going to do here, this is currently using Open PLG, I think it was called. What we're going to do here is go over here to render their 3D view. Yep, OpenGL. And we're going to select Iray. Now, Iray is really good if you have a Nvidia graphics card and a very good Nvidia graphics card. I'm currently running a 980 Ti, which is pretty darn close to a Titan. The reason why, the more graphics cards you have, the easier it is for it to render and do everything. But you don't have to have it. I'm not sure if it works with Red Team cards, but I know it works with Team Green cards, which is Nvidia. So my recommendation, just go with Nvidia. They are a lot more reliable in my opinion, even though they are a little bit more expensive. And all in all, it's a really good system to have set up, to use. Now, when you get started with this, what you're going to want to do first here is come over here to Tools, Preferences, and here in the 3D viewer, where Iray is, you want to unselect CPU. This is going to have it only render with your graphics card when you're doing this. So that way then it doesn't render with a CPU and bog everything down. And then you would just hit apply and continue on. Now, as you can see right here, here's the map that we have set up. Now, you can add more maps to this to actually give you more texture inputs, because I just have my metallic, roughness, bump, and my base color output, and that works for this right here. It looks pretty good right here. And and you saw that right there? That right there is actually because it's rendering this in real time, and this is supposed to be a photorealistic rendering system. It's all based upon the environmental light that's being given. And we'll get into this even more here in just a little bit. But once you get all your textures put where they need to go, normally you'd be using I believe I used, one second here, File, New Substance. Yeah, I use physically based metallic roughness. Now, because of that right there, it'll generate these 4 texture outputs. Now, you can put in more, but these are the ones I went with, and I recommend you just start out with these, because as you can see, that looked pretty good right there on the export. But after you get this done, you get all your textures put together for this, all your graphs. We're going to select one of our graphs, head right here, go to Material, go to Head, and from there we are going to click Export Preset. This is going to export the preset design that you just put together right here. We're going to give it a different name, which would be Head, and then we're going to find this correct folder location just by clicking here. And then we just put it where it needs to go. Where we're going to want to put these files here after you save them is in your Documents file in MDL. And this is after you've installed the vMaterial system. And then you're going to create a new folder, User Materials, and then create another folder to put that in, which I put it in Hammer. And then after that, you just select that, and then you would export this out. Now, there's currently a glitch with this current version of Substance Designer that strips away part of a code that gets these inputs in. Now, how it works right here, it's going to be automatically putting in textures, already putting in the textures that you created, your bitmaps, into 4 locations, which is your base color, your metallic, your normal, and your roughness. But because it strips that away, it just looks like a black mess. It actually looks like a black piece of glass. And because of that, that's actually, we don't want that. So we have to fix that manually at this point. I just seriously, I just got done talking with Algorithmic on Facebook, and they are fully aware of this, and they are fixing this, and hopefully they're going to be releasing it very soon. Since we're not putting out anything more. Now there is a video tutorial on how to use Nvidia Iray for this. I recommend you go take a look at it, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm just showing you the pipeline for exporting. Now, with the current system, how it is set up, with the glitch, we have to go into the code itself using Notepad++, and I'll show you exactly where the problem is. No, I don't want to save. You are fine. Right here is the location for where our materials are. We're going to head in here, hand the hammer, and let's just open up the head right here. Right click on it and have Notepad++ installed when you're doing this. Now, as you can see right here, this is the line of code. This is what makes this work. The problem that I was having for the last 2 weeks has been this line of code right here. This right here, as you can see, base color, base light, file texture, texture 2D, and those parentheses right there, that is where the folder location in the file was supposed to be inputted automatically. So that way then when I load this MDL into Maya Iray, it would actually pull it up automatically and just continue on as normal. But it didn't do that. So we have to go in this and put it in manually. So you'll have to put it in right here. You have to put in this whole line of code. Just find the URL folder, just copy and paste it, and switch around these right here with forward slashes instead of backslashes. If you use the normal URL input area slashes, it won't work. So you have to put in the other ones. I'm not sure why it does that. It shouldn't. It should just be pretty darn easy. But what are you gonna do? Just switch this out real quickly, and then put in the actual file itself right here. And then after you're done doing that, you're gonna save the file, and we're gonna continue on with our lesson here. Now, what I was saying earlier, the reason why you need the line of code that's keeping this from being brought in without having to transfer over the normal mapping thing was actually this line of code right here. There's a different line of code. If you go to the Nvidia Iray forums, there is one put in there for MDL, and one guy was able to help me out with this, and he put in the different line of code to actually get this to work automatically. But I don't want to deal with that, so that's the reason why I transferred over the normal mapping. So that way then it was done and over with. Now that we don't need that. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty part of this. I'm going to bring up the file I was working on here, and here we are. Here is the model I've been working with. This is my dragon hammer. And the reason why I'm using this lighting system right here is because this right here actually gives me the most light to work with. Now, what we're going to do right here, since we're right here, we are going to take a look at the materials themselves. Now, when you add a MDL material, you got to click on it, right select, and then pick out new material like you normally do. But then there's another part. So we're going to be pulling up the hypershader here to get into this next part. Here in the hypershader, here's the head right here. As you can see, it's got these two extra outputs. Don't worry. The only reason why I did that is because I was screwing around with this, trying to get this to work. But if everything went right, and you click on bringing up a IFM MDL material, which is located right here, there it is, you're going to be prompted with this little window right here. This window right here is linked to all the MDLs that we are going to be working with and that are available for you to use. Now, if you go in here into user, these are where you put yours. Go to your user materials, and then your hammer, or whatever else you named it. There, right there, should be your materials that we're going to be working with. I already have the head selected. It's already been put in. Now, the other thing you can also do with the extra inputs back in Substance Designer, I'm pretty sure you can create output nodes for your ambient occlusion, the height, and the specular. And by doing that, you can just bypass a few things and be done with this. But I didn't. I don't know how to get those in yet. I'm actually pretty darn new to Substance Designer. But despite that, this is actually working out pretty well. So after you get that done for all your materials that you're going to be using, all your MDLs, it should be ready to go. Let's just put this down here. And here we are. And what we're going to do is, this is a nifty little feature. We're going to go to IPR, render, and then we're going to render with our current view or camera of whatever you want. And since perspective, we're just going to hit perspective to run with this. And I'm sorry if it looks like I'm barely staring at you guys in this video. The camera is right here. The screen I'm working with is right here. So, and the little view window for seeing me right there is right next to it. So, okay, we are rendering this out. May take a bit with running this camera thing here. And there we are. Now, the reason why we're using this IPR render output right here is because I'm going to show you here. I'm going to pull this off to the side. Put that right there. We can actually zoom in and move around and it'll render in real time. Now, the reason why I suggested to you to actually use a grayscaled normal map is because I believe that's causing this problem for me right here, which is that shininess on the head. I used an ogre skin to actually make this, as well as using bones to actually get the teeth and horns to look just how I wanted them. But as you saw back in the other renders, it wasn't this shiny. So that's why I'm saying you want to go with a grayscaled bump map to actually input on this. If you got everything put together the exact way it should be, this is what you're going to get. And this is actually pretty darn good realistic-wise compared to other renderers. Like Mental Ray, you had to jump through so many hoops to actually get this to work. The other cool thing about Mental Ray here, aside from getting this photorealistic render, is that you can actually export this out or render with the Iray servers when they're officially online. They are currently right now in beta, and I believe you'll be tied into this. This software is $295 or $250 a year. And in my opinion, that is pretty steep, but is well worth it. It is much faster than Iray. Not Iray, Mental Ray. Normally, Mental Ray, for doing something this right here, this is not even in full HD, 1080p. This right here is in 480p, and that right there, even with all that lighting, would probably have taken me 5 minutes, I think. Well, that right there only took me a few seconds to actually get that done. As you can see, it is still rendering, so it's adding in the finer details to actually get all the nooks and crannies and everything. And it looks like it did take down some of the shininess to it, but anyways, but it's actually using the power of your graphics card, which is what all these renderers should actually be using. Not the CPU, not the RAM, the GPU of your graphics card. And the better your graphics card, and the more graphics cards you're using that are linked together with like, Crossfire, I think is what it's called. I'm not sure. I forget what it's actually named. It'll actually improve the speed on this and render it faster. Or you can just use the servers and it'll be much, much faster. But there is a problem right now. The problem is you try doing a batch render to actually get this. Like, if you want to do a turntable with this, and you're going to try and use a batch render, it's not going to give you this exact color. This right here is actually using a RGPS, and what it's actually going to give you is a raw style. Much darker. A little bit more realistic, but much, much darker, and I don't want that. Unless I'm doing something really dark and gritty, but you can barely see anything, even though it does look more realistic. Don't get me wrong on that. Now, why do you want to make an MDL and go through all this trouble? Because if you try using, say, the other material setup, let me just stop this right here and pull up the Hyper Shade again. The only other option for you to put in all these different materials, or just a normal base and everything, so it's not transparent, is by using the IFM backscatter, which is, I believe I have one already selected here, which is this right here. And I'll let you put in a color, the roughness, and the bump map. Why don't you want to use this? Because it's too dark to use. I could not see a thing using this, and it didn't even look realistic. It's good for some things, but not good for this. So hopefully you guys have learned something. Hopefully they get all these things fixed and make Iray an even better renderer. And hopefully this will be available for all the features for you to take care of. Don't get me wrong on this. This is an expensive program. These are a lot of hoops to jump through. But if you're going to be doing this as a career, you're going to be jumping through those hoops anyway, so just get used to it. This is Josh Wood signing off, and hope you guys have a good day and happy rendering.